when people heard I was going to be interviewing Darryl Anka, they started to ask me, well, why don't you ask him this? Why don't you ask him that? And I thought, well, wait a minute. I only have so much time with the man. I just can't ask him all these questions. And then I thought, well, maybe I could. Maybe I should incorporate all the questions people ask me into our interview. And I did. And he was gracious enough to allow us to stay in his home and answer all the questions that we had for him. I hope you enjoyed the interview. When I mentioned I was going to be speaking with you today, a lot of people were excited. They sent in a number of questions.
Okay.
And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to read some of the questions to
Sure.
you, and we'd love to have your perspective.
If I can, some questions may be better answered by Bashar, but I'll do my best.
Most definitely. So I've got a question from Deb and the Abraham Hicks Law of Attraction group in Melbourne, Australia.
Okay.
And they asked the question, when you first started to channel Bashar, did you have someone else ask questions to Bashar, or did you just channel alone?
I find that, I was already in a class situation, so there were people already asking questions.
Okay.
And I have found over the years that that actually makes channeling easier. Because when you're alone, you can just receive a telepathic impression from another entity, and you don't actually have to go into the same state exactly that I go into in order to speak to an audience, because that's only because the thoughts need to be translated for them.
Right.
But if it's just coming to me, I don't need to go fully into that state. So you can sit there at first, especially in the beginning, and kind of wonder, well, I mean, is this coming from someone else? Is it my imagination? Is it accurate? You go through all these kinds of things and go, I'm not really sure what's happening or what I should do with it. You can do it that way, and especially if you become more proficient at it, you can receive things and know, okay, that I'm getting this, I'm getting that, I'll act on it this way. But I have found that in terms of doing vocal channeling in the way that I do for an audience, that's what it's for. So the idea is that when you have someone asking a question, it's easier for you to get out of the way, because the person asking the question, they're kind of acting like a grounding circuit. They're kind of pulling the information through you, and you can just be the conduit. You don't have to sit there and wonder. You can have your own experience, but you don't have to sit there and think about what's coming through you, because the information is kind of coming through and being grounded in them. And it's the completion of a circuit, in a sense, and you can just be the channel, the conduit for that information. I find it's easier to learn to vocal channel if you have people asking questions. Yeah.
Here's another question from Michael. He's from the U.S. And he asks, he says that Bashar often talks about following your highest excitement.
Yes, he does.
And he says, when I'm feeling good, I notice that I experience many more synchronicities. However, when I'm feeling down or low, I wonder, how do I return to feeling good again? How do I get back to feeling my highest excitement?
Well, as Bashar has sort of explained the process in a nutshell, the feelings that we have are always generated by something that we believe or define to be true first. You can't have a feeling without a definition. In other words, feelings don't exist in a vacuum. They don't just happen for no reason. There might be something going on in the unconscious or subconscious mind that's a belief you're holding on to that you're unaware of that is generating the feeling. But that's what's great about having the feeling, because the way Bashar explains it, once you have the feeling, if you understand that the feeling has to be generated by a belief, you can use the feeling to trace back to, what belief do I have to buy into in order to feel the way I do? And that's the point of how to use the feeling. Find out what that belief is. Investigate within yourself. Ask that question. What would I have to believe is true about myself in this circumstance in order to have the feeling I'm having? And if you're willing to hear the answer, you'll find the answer. And once you find out what that belief is, if it's out of alignment with your true vibration, your true self, which is usually what generates what most people call negative feelings, you will realize by identifying that definition that it is out of alignment, that it's nonsensical, it's illogical, it has nothing to do with you. It's something you bought into when you were growing up, something you learned from your parents, your school, your society, your friends, and didn't realize you were kind of buying into it slowly over time. But now you have this feeling and you don't know why it's there. So you trace the feeling back, you discover the definition, you make it conscious, you become aware of what it is, and when it's out of alignment with you, you realize it's kind of nonsensical. It doesn't really make sense for you to actually keep believing this thing. And so as soon as it becomes illogical and nonsensical, you drop it. Unless there's another belief, even stronger under that, that's saying you have to keep holding on to this. And if that's the case, you just keep doing the process until you find the core belief that all the other beliefs are built on. And when you get rid of the core belief, when you let that core belief go, all secondary beliefs that are attached to it will also collapse. But if you find a belief and let it go and you're still behaving the same, still feeling the same, you haven't found the core belief yet. Keep digging, is basically what Bashar says. When you find it and let it go, everything attached to that will also go away.
I think that's what I love most about the teachings of Bashar, and that is he really encourages people to go within and find
Yes.
their truth. He's a guide, I find.
He is a guide, and he's also letting people know that a lot of this so-called, again, esoteric or New Age information can really be presented in very pragmatic and practical ways, like a toolkit.
Yes.
To him, this is just energy physics. It's what you put out is what you get back. And if you understand how reality is created by us, experienced by us, you can break it down into the methods that we use to generate our experience. And when you can break it down into those methods, you have a toolkit that you can use to change your experience of reality in a conscious way. So that is what I appreciate about what he does, is he takes a lot of metaphysical information, brings it down to earth, no pun
Definitely.
intended, and gives us a toolkit and says, here, go off and live your life, and here is how to live the life that you really prefer to live because you have the tools and you don't have to keep coming back to me. That's really what he's trying to do, is put himself out of a job by teaching us how to live our lives in a way that we know we are empowered. We are all that we need, really, because we're connected to Source like everyone.
True.
And we have access to all of that if we just understand how the mechanism works.
Yes.
So he's attempting to explain to us how the mechanism works. Here's the instruction manual. Go use it and you will see that it works for you.
We have another question from Carl from the US again.
Yeah.
And he says, hey, Darryl,
Hi, Carl.
when you first started channeling, you channeled Bashar and Anima,
Yes.
Bashar's female counterpart. Is she your future self as well? And does she look exactly like Bashar but with long hair?
She looks a little different than he does. No, she's not my future self as well. But she was easier for me to channel. Her energy was softer. And even though Bashar was there at the beginning, I needed to practice more with her at first to get used to the energy of their people. And then by the time Bashar really came in more and more, his energy was so much stronger that I could then handle it because I had practiced with her. So that's why it started with her. And she's also, Bashar's a first contact specialist, but Anima is a social engineer. And so she was able to sort of lay the groundwork for me to understand how to approach when I would be ready to channel Bashar and deliver the kind of information I needed to deliver, or that he needed to deliver to us, which would be very different than the kind of information she would be able to deliver, because it's simply two different kinds of jobs that they do.
Yes.
But that's really kind of how the process happened, and they worked together that way. So she was sort of preparing me to be able to handle what needed to come through from him. Yeah.
We've got a question from Grace.
Yes.
She asks, if channeling is tuning in to the higher self and being a receiver for the higher mind and aspects of consciousness coming through, do you think that we can live in a state of constant channel by reaching a state of consciousness where there is no separation made between heaven and earth, human and alien, and evolve it to a state where we are being our higher self and completely conscious of other life forms?
Yes.
Great, next question.
Basically, yes. I mean, that's the whole idea. We are uplifting, upgrading our frequency. We are dissolving the idea of separation and barriers, because those are just illusions anyway. Now, I mean, as long as we're physical, we're obviously going to maintain some sense of separation, because otherwise you can't have a physical reality experience. But the idea is to let go of as much of it as possible so that we're in harmony with the idea of our higher mind as much as possible while still physical. But that gives us great advantage to have different perspectives, insights, to be able to function on a completely different level, to upgrade our frequency, and to experience many of the kinds of things one would imagine one would experience in an idealized reality, so to speak. So Yes, and then of course you can go beyond that and go into other levels, dimensions, and what have you.
Right.
But while we're physical, yes, we can certainly achieve a much higher level of expression, of harmony with our higher minds, and start to function as a more holistic being rather than functioning in such a separated kind of modality. So, yeah, the basic answer is yes, we can.
Subscribe and watch part 2 on YouTube.
What is your opinion of entheogens, ayahuasca, peyote, San Pedro mushrooms, and sacred plant medicines? And have you experienced any of them?